Welcome once again to GPS, God's Prophetic Surprises, the program where we take an intergenerational approach to Bible prophecy and particularly the book of Revelation. And we are looking for those amazing prophetic surprises that we run into every so often. So I'm excited to be back with you. Again, we are still on Zoom after more than 6 months. And we're grateful for this venue and glad that we can be with you during this time when I think everybody needs a little bit of encouragement. So I have with me, I'll let them introduce themselves. I'm Jon Paulien. I'm the a professor of New Testament at Loma Linda University. And with me is Shifra.
My name is Shifra Thipuliai, and I serve as associate pastor at Campus Hill Church in Loma Linda.
All right, and also with me is Nick.
Yes, I'm Nick Snell. I'm the youth pastor at the Azure Hills Church in Grand Terrace, California.
All right, and there's the other guy. We were discussing how to pronounce his name. I'll let him do it.
Yeah, but I'll do it the easy way. I'm Guilherme Borda, and if that's easy, I mean, if it's not. And I am a PhD student at Andrews University, focusing on the book, focusing in the New Testament and also exploring the book of Revelation.
And Guilherme, it's very, very exciting to have you on the program because your work is direct with the text, it's fresh, etc. On the other hand, you care deeply about communicating it to everyday people. And so that has assisted us in this intergenerational approach to Revelation. So thank you, all three of you, for joining me today. And a couple programs back, the last time that Shifra was able to be with us, we were looking at Revelation 12, 15 to 16. And many people coming to those texts have wondered if they might say something about the United States of America as a place that was a refuge for many, many people during, say, the 16th, 17th, 18th centuries, people leaving other parts of the world where there was persecution. In the process, though, I think our discussion asked the question, was it a refuge for everybody? And Shifra had some thoughts on that she wasn't able to get in. So I'm going to let her do that, and then we'll move to verse 17. Go ahead.
Sounds good. Well, thanks. Pretty cool that you remembered. It was about
Paper remembers.
Yeah. I was just thinking about the time when I had a relative visit me from overseas, and I think it must have been one of my churches that we were attending. Anyways, the point is, in that church, the song "God Bless America" was part of the worship hour on a Sabbath morning. And you know how the tune goes, God bless America. No, I'm not going to sing it on there. But it was really interesting. So the American flag was there, this song about God bless America. And I remember after the service, my relative just saying, isn't it interesting that they sing that patriotic, a very like national, like God bless this country song in the worship? So it was a little contrasting to what she understood for worship. And when we talked about it, we landed where I just want to present where we landed to the conversation and have fun with it, if it fits in somewhere. But if we think about it in terms of like a military, then like, yeah, it's really inappropriate to like, sing about, not that it's inappropriate to honor the courage and the heart for those who serve a country as a people, but in terms of advancing government military prowess in the world against others, right? Because we have, as a country, gone to war, and I don't know, it gets complicated, right? Like, if you're from Hiroshima, during a certain era, singing God Bless America at church and you're being invited for it has complicated feelings. Bottom line was, we said, but if it means God bless America, as in like little Timmy, God bless us, everyone, the people, we the people in this land and in this country, then that is a beautiful song to sing for God to bless the people in America. And then that is worship appropriate, because we are all about the people, anyone, everyone, and may God bless us, everyone. Now, if we start talking about political parties and agendas of a certain government over these people, that's where I would suggest for our conversation here in Revelation 12 that might not be appropriate for worship. And I wonder what the Word of God has to say about America, the people that can be redeemed, America in Revelation 12 in another light that may have a certain prophecy coming in store for it.
Yeah, well, I started out in ministry in New York City, and it was a German church. Now, my own father was in confinement during the years of the war, because he was not an American citizen. He had arrived a few years before the war and had never gotten around to it. Eventually, he did so, but at that time, he was confined on his wedding day.
Wow.
He had to go to New Jersey to get the dress. Had he been caught in New Jersey, there would have been no wedding, and maybe no me. So these things are real. And I started ministry in a German church. It had been historically German and now was transitioning to English, and I was somebody that could work both cultures. And the issue of putting the flag in the church was the German folk just would not do it, would not consider it. When we developed a Pathfinder Club, of course, all the parents in the Pathfinder Club wanted, to have the flag in the church, and we had a long debate about it. And then finally, one of the German ladies said, "I have an idea. Why don't we put the flags over by the piano? That way the Germans don't have to look at them, but they're still, in view as the English ones want." And everybody kind of threw up their hands and said, "Sounds like a decent compromise." So there's more to the story that's actually kind of humorous, but I won't take up time right now. But what do you think, Nick and Guillermo?
You can go first, Nick, if you want.
No, I saw you ready. You were ready.
I'll be very honest. I think flags have no place in church because they are a symbol of a political system. If you want to pray for the nation and pray that God will bless the United States of America, I think that is appropriate, because we should pray. I mean, when you think about the exiles, the people who were in exile, they were to pray for the well-being of the place where they were. So wherever we are, it is perfectly fine to pray for the place where you live in. Now, to have a flag in the church, it's I think to me it's cringeworthy, because when you think about it, flags are very, very commonly associated with military engagement. It is the banner you carry in battle. It is the banner that represents that nation, and then you can think about it, like, for example, in different cultures too. So I'll give you an example. Would you sing the national anthem in church? Right? I think that would be very problematic too. I'll give you an example of my own country, Brazil. Part of the anthem says, basically refers to the nation in a language that is idolatrous. Basically says, "O nation, beloved," and literally says like idolized.
We worship you.
Well, yeah, it doesn't say like we worship you, but it says kind of like that, like idolize, like hey, oh, kind of like that. And so it's problematic. But sometimes there's activities in church when people will go and they will bring a flag inside. In my opinion, I think these people, they have good intentions. But I would venture to say, and I know that some people may be upset, but I would say it is inappropriate. I think the church is no place for a flag. The church is the place where there's no Greek or Gentile, or male or female, or master or slave, but we are all one in Christ Jesus, right? So like I said, we can pray for the place we live in, but I think that symbols of nations, symbols that represent these institutions of power, I think they have no place in church. It doesn't matter which country it is. And I think it doesn't matter, like if it's Brazil or United States of America or whatever country you are in, or Nepal, it doesn't matter. And I think it's not a place, because after all, in church, we are celebrating a kingdom that will, as Daniel says, I know we're talking about Revelation, but as in Daniel too, it will eliminate all of these other kingdoms and the wind will blow them away. So basically, we're celebrating a kingdom through which there will be no more of any of these human kingdoms. It's not necessarily saying that all of these kingdoms are inherently bad always. That's not the point. But the point is, this kingdom is really what we look for and what we should cherish. Plus, flags may also have very problematic meanings in and of themselves. Some people, for example, may have issues with the flag of Brazil, for example, with the slogan that it has. Some people say it is actually a religious slogan from positivism, which is anti-religious, so to speak. So it can be problematic. What will we do? Some people have problems with the American flag. I'm not going to say anything about that. I'm not American. I don't want to get into trouble. But I can say about the Brazilian
flag. Quite a bit of German influence in Brazil. It sounds like you're right there with some of my people back in New York.
So, I mean, and when you think about it, like, for example, look, flags are often taken as symbols of oppression. Even if the people who devised them may not have had that intention, they often become. And in church, because we have people of all nations coming, for them, a certain flag, look, it doesn't matter where we are, right? Whichever country you are in, that country may have been in war with another one. And you may have a visitor who is from this other country that has been invaded, whatever it is. And so I think it's not very good. And in fact, I think Revelation 13 teaches us something. We will get there. We'll get there.
We're going to get there soon. Yes. Nick, do you have any thoughts?
Yeah, I mean, this is something that I kind of woke up to over time, because growing up here in the United States, it was normal for there to be a flag in most every sanctuary I ever worshipped in growing up.
My church was the only one in the conference that didn't.
Right.
Yeah.
So it's the norm. And so it took me a while, and I would say even it wasn't until recently that I even noticed the issue. I was so accustomed to it. But realizing that it can really be a stumbling block for people. And some people would say not having it would be a stumbling block for them, because it would be a change, and change is often difficult in church. But, I don't think that the division that it could cause to have it is worth it. But like I said, removing it would make some people feel very uncomfortable at the same time. And Jon, you mentioned Pathfinders, and we have a strong Pathfinders club here at our church. And it's interesting, even with how polarized our country is now. If someone's really waving a flag in your face right now, you're going to make some assumptions about that person. And so it's really ground that I think you have to be pretty careful about. And I don't think it's worth dividing people over it. One thing that our church does do that makes me feel a little bit different is when we have what we call an international Sabbath, where everybody's flag is there. That I feel a little bit differently about, because it feels like, hey, we're trying to celebrate people, like Schiffer was saying earlier, from all these places. It's not like one we have our allegiance to above all. It's like I'm not really comfortable with sometimes even saying the Pledge of Allegiance. It's like I'm only able to pledge allegiance if it's submitted to what God is saying. So it is problematic, like Guilherme is saying. So
well, keep in mind,
I think we can't let it divide people.
A flag is a symbol. just like a lot of things in Revelation are symbols.
Right.
And symbols can mean different things to different people.
Wow.
Symbols can change in meaning over time.
Mm-hmm.
A lot of things people read into Revelation have nothing to do with what would have meant to the original audience, for example. And if there's any folk out there my age that are just a little unhappy with the discussion the last few minutes, that's the whole point of GPS, multi-generational. And if we're not listening to the younger generation, why would they want to stay? Why would they want to be part of something if they're not getting a chance to say their piece? So I'm so grateful to my colleagues here to be willing to say what's on their heart and give it to us straight. So the reality is that the best definition of politics I've ever heard is balancing conflicting expectations. When you have a church where half the people have one expectation, the other half have a different one, that is politics at its best and sometimes at its worst. Now, coming back to the text of Revelation, Seventh-day Adventists have understood a very positive picture of the United States of America in chapter 12. It is the place that rescues those who are under persecution, particularly in Europe. And historically, that is a case one can definitely make. We brought up last time, there are the issues of Africans and Native Americans who don't fit that narrative so well. And the beauty of the Seventh-day Adventist position is that it goes to Revelation 13, takes another look at the United States and says that the United States has its challenging features as well. So Seventh-day Adventists have always had kind of a balanced view, I think, that the United States, on the one hand, is blessed by God. God ordained that there would be a place like that to uplift religious freedom. A Muslim scholar friend of mine said recently, Southern California is the first place in human history where all the religions of the world are in one place together in the context of religious freedom. We're not killing each other off, and so we can actually listen to each other and come to understand each other. So the United States is amazing in that way. On the other hand, because of its geography, it is uniquely powerful in the world. It has the world's largest contiguous farmland interspaced by navigable rivers. So you can send the food all over the world cheaply. And in a sense, undersell everybody else on what they can grow locally. It's an amazing thing. And so the United States has tremendous economic heft just on that basis alone. That has made all the difference to its history. Is that an accident? Adventist pioneers believe, no, it wasn't an accident. God had plans for the United States. He had plans for the Constitution and the way aspects of it at least reflected God's government better than some other options that were out there. The Bible often uses kingdom, but if Jesus had been around today, he might have used different metaphors for government, a little bit closer to a republic or a democratic kind of a view. So anyway, Shifra, last word on this topic, and then we'll move on.
I think the conversation has been great, and you really moved me with yours, Dr. Paulien. So I really appreciate the platform. There really has to be this understanding, I think, of what we intend when we put out certain symbols. Like you said, symbols can mean certain things. And if we hear the heart cry of those who understand certain flags to be a symbol of terror or oppression, a symbol of an institutional power that has harmed, then I think we can be moved in compassion to act according and respond to those heart cries. And then also to have this understanding that as we interact with those who are, traumatized, honestly, by certain symbols, that to others, and I am a U.S. citizen from birth, right? So I'm like, oh man, Nick, you might have to give me your passport after you said that about the Pledge of Allegiance.
Turn it in, Nick.
Turn it in.
Yeah.
But other people see the flag and other symbols of what we're talking about, like songs, as representing people. And so just on that note, I think God is always interested in engaging, uplifting, upholding, and redeeming people. So there has to be that nuance between institutional powers, especially political ones, and the human souls, the people that Jesus Christ came to die for.
And can you understand, folk, based on what the three of you have been saying, can you understand how many Muslims look at the cross? Because for them, the most impactful symbolism of the cross was on the shields of the Crusaders, who had come to cut them down many times, sometimes indiscriminately. When the Crusaders took over Jerusalem, they killed all the inhabitants, Muslim, Christian, Jew, all together. They completely replaced the population of Jerusalem, almost totally with people who had come from Europe. So that's ingrained in the historical memory, the power of a symbol, you see. So that cross, which to many of us is the most beautiful thing imaginable, because it tells us of the grace and mercy of God, and a God who loves us so much that he would rather die than see us die. That's an amazing story. But the cross does not speak so equally in every other context of the world. And to be sensitive to how people view symbols, and that means a lot of listening, I think. Well, let's go to Revelation 12:17. And Nick, would you have it in front of you? Could just read that text for us, and invite our audience to look it up as well. Revelation 12:17.
All right, and I'm reading from the New King James Version. And the dragon was enraged with the woman, and he went to make war with the rest of her offspring, who keep the commandments of God and have the testimony of Jesus Christ.
Okay, what are these commandments? Is there anything specific in mind here, or is this just do what God says?
What's the Greek word?
Commandments. It's the same word used for the 10 Commandments.
Right.
And in the Old Testament, that word is sometimes just used in general for God's commandments, not always specifically the 10 Commandments. So what do they mean here?
Well, I like this question because just this morning I was reading in Nehemiah, and they kind of had this revival and this commitment, and they weren't just committing to the 10 Commandments, they were committing to letting the land lay fallow every 7 years and all these other things. So I love this question. This is a great question. How do we know which ones they are?
Yeah. Any evidence in the book that John even knew about the 10 Commandments? Sort of assume the commandments of God means the 10 Commandments, but the word could mean other things. What do you think?
Well, one thing I would say in favor of the evidence that he knew about the 10 Commandments is that the book has tremendous and very extensive connections to the Torah, to the Pentateuch, the first books of the Old Testament: Genesis, Exodus, Leviticus, Numbers, and Deuteronomy. I mean, you have the Song of Moses connection. You have all sorts of connections of liberation and God. So God liberating his people and all of these things. And the book really, really builds very powerfully on a covenantal structure. So in my understanding, apocalyptic thinking emerges out of the soil of covenant. Without covenant, there's no apocalyptic in the biblical understanding. Of course, there's other apocalyptic texts beyond the Bible that I'm not talking about that broader definition, but specifically the apocalyptic texts in the Bible, they are at the same time covenantal and tie back with the covenants in the Old Testament. And you have all of those evidences that John was very much aware and that he was very much in tune with the thinking of the Old Testament, with all the imagery and the covenant, the commandments, the very important issue of idolatry and worship of the Creator. So creation, which is another theme in the Pentateuch, and even the idea of a woman representing the people of God, and then later the prostitute kind of representing an apostate people of God, and then you have also the beasts in connection with Daniel. So the connection is very thorough. The question, to be quite honest, to me, would be more whether it is only the 10 Commandments or all of the commandments. I think, to me, that would be a little bit more difficult question. Is it just the 10 Commandments? Is it all commandments? And then
I take you to be saying that John's familiarity with the Old Testament, we would assume that the primary meaning in the Old Testament might be his. Okay. Nick, go ahead.
Yeah, I was going to say, of all the commandments, aren't the 10 commandments like the primary, like, if it's any commandments, it's at least these commandments, and then we may expand from there, but they're kind of like the core, right? So that's how I see it. It's at least the 10, and then whether it's more than that or not, I don't know.
Can I jump in?
Yeah.
So in this double Dutch of which commandments it is, I also think of how Jesus said, all the law and the prophet hangs on this, the greatest commandment, love the Lord your God with all your heart, mind. And then, which comes from the Shema, right, in Deuteronomy. And then he extends it and says, and the second greatest is this, love your neighbor as yourself. So I just thought I'd put that in the double Dutch.
Well, I can show that 8 of the 10 commandments are referenced in the book of Revelation.
Okay.
You have in several places the idea that those who oppose God are murderers, adulterers, liars, and thieves. That's commandments 6 through 9. Okay. And when we get to Revelation 13, one of the things we'll observe is that the beasts of Revelation 13, the opponents of God, are counterfeiting the first 4 commandments. Commandments 1, 2, 3, and 4, and we will identify the specific locations where that occurs. So the idea that the 10 commandments are crucial here has been very important, I think, in understanding that at the end of time, all of God's commandments will be at issue. And that the people of God, the remnant people, which we'll talk more about next time, the remnant people of God will be those who will focus in some way on the commandments of God. I'm afraid our time is up, but I'm glad you were with us, and we thank you for watching GPS.